Welcome everyone, welcome to Why Is It So Cold Sunday. Today I was planning to take a nap and not really make any videos, but Blizzard came and backstabbed me. What a betrayal. We have some balance tuning to talk about for today, because Blizzard has just announced that April 5th, so tomorrow, Monday, there is going to be a hotfix with a series of buffs or nerfs coming to a few specs. This means that it's going to be a hotfix, it's not going to come in. You won't have to wait next reset for all of this stuff to be live. So let's talk about the first change, which is a nerf, and it is going to be, I guess, another nerf, because prior to this we heard from Blizzard that the 4-piece set bonus of the Guardian Druid was getting its damage reduced beyond 5 targets. This was a nerf, of course, for massive pulls, but this was still not quite enough. Let me just give you an example of what was the problem with this tier set for Guardian. So, as you can see from this abomination that just happened, the problem is the AoE damage that you can do with the tier set of Guardian. Giving you tons and tons of damage when you were within Incarnation, and then now that you have your 2-piece that gives you Incarnation when you are inside of Barkskin for 4 seconds, you also get this 4-piece damage working for 4 seconds. The damage scales with all the power increases, damage increases, haste increases that you might get within Incarnation. So it was tons of damage, and the first change of this balance tuning round is that the bonus of Architect's Aligner damage and healing is reduced by 35%. So on top of the already reduced damage beyond 5 targets that hit this 4-piece, now it also gets 35% damage reduction and healing reduction. It is still a very good tier set, it still works quite nicely, and it also shouldn't really change the way Guardian Druid plays. Guardian Druid is quite happy to do its huge pulls around Incarnation, and also is quite grateful of the 2-piece set bonus, giving them 4 seconds of Incarnation whenever they use Barkskin. This was just the cherry on top. A gigantic cherry, but it was still just the final touch of this build for Guardian Druid, and it was necessary, because the damage of Guardian was just way too high within that very little window. Then we go over to buffs instead. The buff in question, the first in line, is for Mage. Now you might be wondering, okay, izen, we went through the raid, we went through Mythic Plus, we looked at which specs were growing in popularity, in performance, etc, etc. I took my notes, I studied well. So listening to what you taught me, I would have to say that this is not going to be about Frost Mage, because I was told that Frost Mage is the more popular in Mythic Plus, Frost Mage is the more popular in Raid Encounters, it's also performing amongst the better range DPS, at least, in Raid Encounters. So now, if we take away Frost, the question is Fire getting buffed? Is Arcane getting buffed? Or are they getting buffed together? Well, unfortunately for the Arcane Mage enjoyers, it's not their turn, because it is Fire Mage that gets buffed. Blizzard is buffing first in line, they are buffing their damage, their base damage. It's always important to divide whether or not one of your borrowed powers is getting buffed, or one of your base abilities or base passives are getting buffed. Fire Mage gets more damage to their Fireball, to their Fire Blast, and to their Pyroblast. So this obviously has little to no impact in AoE, because, well, you don't AoE with those abilities, so it's not really going to do anything for AoE. It is, of course, more centered on single target. These abilities all put together, if you look at the overall damage of a Fire Mage, and then you take these percentage of damage increases, it should be in at around 4 to 5% more single target damage, just from the sheer buff to these abilities. Then Fire Mage also gets another buff, because the set bonus gets buffed. The fire set bonus, the 2-piece set bonus gets buffed. This tier set was nerfed before it went live. Nerfed exactly like this. The 4-piece set bonus is now only going to recharge your Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames charges 50% faster instead of 100% faster. But now it gets buffed in the 2-piece because now the increases in your combustion duration is going to go up to 4 seconds. This is okay to slash good, I guess, in Mythic Plus, where you don't make use of Sun King's Blessing, so you only have one combustion to use, which is your base one, and then you also have the Relic, which gets the CDR back quite quickly in Mythic Plus. You play very often with Kindling to get the CDR or combustion back more often, but you still only have one. So increasing the duration by 2 seconds is not going to be as impactful as the single target build of Fire Mage, which uses 2 combustions. They use their normal combustion and then they use Sun King's Blessing combustion. This is quite relevant because with this buff, now Sun King's Blessing, when you activate that combustion with your hard casted Pyroblast, now that combustion is going to last for 10 seconds. 6 from the legendary, 4 from the tier set being buffed. So now your Sun King's Blessing is going to be your old combustion, your old 10-second combustion. And your current combustion is going to last for 14 seconds now. So you now have even more windows for burst damage as a Fire Mage, particularly and primarily the buff is going to be, as we said, centered on single target. We have already taken a look a few days ago, on the damage, the single target damage in the race so far. Fire Mage was one of the specs that was struggling more compared to other, and in particular compared to their, I guess, brother currently, Frost Mage, doing much better than Fire at the moment. I know, many people will be triggered. They will be triggered that, hey, guess what? Fire Mage is not doing well. It's been 2 weeks and Blizzard is already buffing them. What a surprise, right? Where is the buff to Shadow Priest? Some might ask. Where is the buff to Feral Druid? Some might ask. Of course, Blizzard goes to buff Fire Mage. I know. I feel you. Another round of buffs goes to Windwalker Monk. This mentality of Blizzard is the same. Fire Mage was being buffed because their single target was too weak. Windwalker Monk is also getting buffed because their single target is too weak. They left behind a developer's note for Monk saying, while Windwalker shines in multi-target situations, we are seeing that their performance falls behind in single-target scenarios. So the result, of course, is that their single-target output gets buffed. This means that Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, and Tiger Palm, so your main single-target abilities, all get buffed in damage by 10%, plus your talent, Fist of the White Tiger, but that doesn't really matter. So if you look at these abilities put together for Windwalker Monk, this is going to total out to be at 3.5 to 4% more damage on pure single target. It's not going to help as much in AoE, of course, because in AoE, the Monk has moved away from their trifecta build centered around a Whirling Dragon Punch, and now they turned into a Beyblade, spamming Spinning Crane Kick, so they don't get as much value from these buffs in AoE. I still think this is going to be not really too much, not really enough for Windwalker. You know, this is, for example, I think it's the 4th or 5th highest single target damage of a Windwalker Monk in Mythic Skolex. And look where the Windwalker Monk is right now. You can be the 5th best Monk and you are that far below so many other specs. So getting buffed 3.5% in a single target is not really going to change that situation for Windwalker. To be fair, I know you could also argue that it does not need to be changed. Windwalker is already shining in AoE. It wouldn't be fair if they also started being top pick in single target. Sure, sometimes some specs for a tier or two do get that benefit, do get that luxury of being perfect in every damage profile, but it's never quite been the case of Windwalker. Windwalker has always been quite fond of their AoE damage, so this buff is just to try them, to not make them literally tank level of single target damage. Another sad buff. This is actually sad. This is the type of buff that is so sad that I would think it's a nerf, because this that type of buff means that Blizzard realized the spec needed help, and then they give them this. which is basically an insult. It's like a joke. So, Fan of Knives of Assassination Rogue gets buffed in damage by 30%. Assassination, as you know, has pathetic AoE damage. As a Mythic Plus spec, it's always been their bane going into Mythic Plus. Way too fast. Mobs die too quickly for Assassination to do anything. You know, look at this. This is one of the top 10 Assassination Rogues in a Mythic Plus key. You know, it's not very good. He has to fight with a Prot Paladin. You know, that's the state of Assassination. So, buffing Assassination's Fan of Knives by 30% more damage when this is their Fan of Knives damage, you know, it's what, 1.5–2% more damage in AoE. I really struggle to see where would this buff end up lying in their AoE power, you know. I would have thought perhaps buffing more of their Crimson Tempest, you know, maybe buffing some of their AoE talents. So this Fan of Knives buff really is quite pointless. It's not really gonna change anything for Assassination, so let's just pretend it did not happen. Now, what did actually happen is a buff to Retribution Paladin. Retribution is, as usual, in its middle of the pack, kind of fine self, right? Nobody wants them, nobody picks them. It's not that they are hated or they have too bad of a rep right now as a spec. They are fine in general, but the buff they are receiving is for AoE. Divine Storm is buffed by 10% in damage, and Wake of Ashes is buffed by 10% in damage. This, in Mythic Plus AoE heavy scenarios, is going to roughly amount to 3.5–4% more AoE damage for a Ret Paladin. The other buff, which is probably a little bit better, even just for quality of life, is the 2-piece set bonus of Retribution Paladin. Now, when you benefit from Art of War and you happen to proc Seraphim instead, you're gonna get Seraphim for 4 seconds instead of 3. As I said, this is just better for quality of life. Leaving you 1 extra GCD within that Seraphim window is just gonna feel a little bit better than when you had 3 seconds. It is still quite a small buff to Red Paladin, however, is not that relevant. Looking at Raid, they were performing better actually in single target than they were in AoE situations, so perhaps this is also why Blizzard is targeting their AoE, maybe. Then we have our last nerf. We have looked at the, I guess, outlier tank damage of Guardian Druid with their tier set. Meanwhile, Warlock gets nerfed in a talent. This has been quite interesting, the choice, because this is not a borrowed power being nerfed. This is not a legendary, it's not a tier set. This thing getting nerfed is in your talent, so it's in your base choices, in your base class, in your base spec. So, Demonic Consumption, the talent being picked by 100% of Demonology Warlocks, now is going to cause your Tyrant to consume 12% of your other active minions' HP instead of 15%. So, if you're not, you know, aware of what Demonology Warlock does, because not many people used to play Demo, so there is the TLDR that your Demonic Tyrant scales with stamina, scales with health. The more health you have, the better. This is why perhaps you have seen, without quite understanding the meme about buffing your Demo Lock in your party or in your raid by having a Blood Death Knight use Vampiric Aura. Because of the massive HP increase you gain, it is going to directly buff your Demo Lock. So the nerf is, of course, to the damage of your Tyrant as a Demo Lock. We have already seen in Mythic Plus, we have seen in the raid, going through the damage profile, the single target, the AoE or the cleave, we have seen that Demonology Warlock is, I guess, outperforming, yes, but also overperforming itself. Perhaps it was in need of a, you know, reining back in of their performance, especially when it's not even one of the lone spec in a hybrid class. You know, maybe if you have Windwalker as strong as Demo, if you have Ret or even Shadow Priest as strong as Demo, it might make some sense. But if you make Demo, then what about Destruction and Affliction? If in a single target fight you pick Demo because it's stronger, and in an AoE fight you pick Demo because it's stronger, and in Mythic Plus you pick Demo because it's stronger, and in Cleave, the home of a Destro Lock, you still pick Demo anyways, you know, what's the purpose of the other two specs? You know, aren't they supposed to have a niche where they are better at? than the other spec, right? Aren't they supposed to allow you to choose a strong and a weak point of their spec, of their build? Instead, up to now, for Warlock, it was an overwhelming majority of Demonology being the better performer of the specs. So we have a nerf for Demonology. I don't think it's quite enough, honestly. We will see if any of these are going to change something, anything at all. I think the larger one overall is the nerf to Guardian, just for Mythic Plus and just for the point of those huge pools. But outside of that, they should still be fine. And this one for Warlock is also a pretty interesting change in terms of power. The other side, the good side, the buffs. I think the better one, purely looking at it numerically, the better one is obviously the one to Fire Mage. This is clearly the strongest one. It should give them another bump up in value, in priority in the raid, given that now their single target might gain even upwards of 10% more damage. We will see once the experts will come up with their sims and their deductions out of this, so we will have to see. But for the moment, these are the changes. There is also a pretty wide list, by the way. If you scroll down, you will see that Holy Priest is also being targeted. There is a ton of stuff being listed there. Don't worry if you were starting to panic, thinking that Holy Priest got their month in the spotlight and they were immediately getting nerfed to the ground. That is all a bunch of PvP stuff, PvP changes, and some developer notes explaining the situation. So outside of that, Holy Priest is not really getting changed or touched yet in terms of their power. So you can stay safe for the moment for all of the Holy Priests. So these are the changes that will go live in the hotfix tomorrow on Monday. For now, we can stop here for this last day of this weekend. So thank you once again for watching the video, guys, and for helping to support the channel in whichever way you can. And some of these ways might be commenting down below, as well as liking the video and also subscribing to the channel. But as it is tradition, my handler has allowed me to only open the subscription button to all of the specs that have gotten buffed for today. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, well, I wasn't expecting it, by the way, but we got into April and it was snowing just a few kilometers away from my apartment block. So close.